Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining in again for my approximately monthly AMA. Nice to see you. We have a whole bunch of questions as usual. I think we can keep it inside around about an hour, but there's a lot of good questions today as usual, and keep them coming. You can even submit during this, but if we don't make them today, we will take them next time. So don't feel shy. Send in your questions, and we will be very happy to answer them now or at the next AMA. Before I go to the first questions, I just want to give you a little bit of a general update. As you know, we did a strategy change of direction around about the new year. And that was all about beginning to decentralize, getting communities more involved in contributing to Concordium and outsourcing some of the work, getting people to build essential components and take a little less centralized approach than we naturally had to have in the beginning. When you're kicking off a project, you want to make sure that it takes the right direction. I think that's going well. We can mention a couple of examples. We have the ambassador program, where I heard this morning that we're now at around 40 ambassadors that are out there telling their communities about Concordium. We would still like to get more, so feel free to go in and sign up for the ambassador programs. There are some benefits attached to being an ambassador. And also we have launched our digital asset platform, where we give you a lot of assistance in terms of various tools and templates that can make it easier for you to build content yourself and distribute that coherently with our sort of look and feel and image that we wish to portray. So I think that's going well. We had a target of getting to early 30s. We're at 40, and as I said, if that is something that would inspire you and interest you, we're very happy to have more of you joining that program. We're also setting up a more organized effort to build our developer community. We have now 2 persons dedicated to that. They are beginning to organize events, side events at some of the various conferences and our own events, all with a purpose to make it easier to understand how to work with Concordium, how to use our code, how to build on Concordium. And we have also, in context of that, we have released an updated version of Concordium Academy to support builders, to support developers. And in general, I think it's really about getting the community more engaged. You all have a role to play here. Help us by sharing, help us by linking, help us by liking all of the content that's coming out on a continuous basis. And between us, we can reach an ever broader audience. So we very much appreciate your assistance and help and support in this. Another thing I wanted to mention, because it's going to take up quite a bit of our airtime in April, is that you all know that I was an early internet pioneer and had some success with launching one of the first internet trading platforms back in the day with Saxo Bank. And of course, when you have had success with a transformative technology, you keep looking. That's also what brought me to blockchain fairly early on. But there is, of course, a new kid on the block that I think we're all increasingly interested in, artificial intelligence. Now, I've also followed that space for quite a long while, made a few investments in it. I find it extremely fascinating, and much as I liked the internet, I actually think that AI is an even bigger disruption. In fact, I have no hesitation in saying that this is the biggest disruption I've seen in my lifetime, and hence probably also the biggest one you have seen in most of your lifetimes, unless you're very, very old. AI is really interesting, and it's gonna change the way we interact with each other. It's gonna change the way we do things. It's gonna provide a lot of efficiency and a lot of progress and a lot of amplification of what we do. I don't think in the short run you should see AI as a big threat, more see it as something that you can use to amplify your own abilities to have more productive output, deliver better quality. Long term, there's a lot of scary aspects of AI as well, and we'll see how that develops. But I think it's something that you need to be involved in, and hence we've of course also looked at that in a Concordium context. What role can we play here? What is the intersection between AI and blockchain? And I would like to sort of hint at some of the conclusions that we have reached and that you'll hear more about in the coming months. For me, there is a clear intersection and a clear interplay between blockchain and AI. And the early sort of obvious one that by happily sits quite well with Concordium and the vision that we have pursued right from the start is that you already been exposed to deep fakes. You maybe haven't yet got the call from your kid saying, "Oh, Dad, I lost my wallet and I have to call from another phone. Please transfer $100 to me now." But you will, because AI also lends itself to fraud, to misrepresentation, to deep fakes, to a lot of things that unfortunately can be used for good, but can also be used for bad. So if you look at the current legislation that's coming out, the current comments that are coming out, they're very much about responsibility and accountability. Now, if an AI agent is out there performing some task, who's actually responsible for what it does? This is also something that's currently holding back the big platforms from releasing some of the good work they're unquestionably doing behind the scenes. But there's a real concern with the Metas, the Googles, and those guys that if they release sophisticated AI tools, can they be held responsible as a platform for abuses of that? Just as Facebook can get big fines for hate speech, etc., and hence a big team sitting there trying to make sure that they delete stuff that could get them into trouble. Now, AI is like a multiple X magnification of that risk, because now you can actually produce stuff that is very convincing, very lifelike, and in essence can be put to say and do and present anything. I think we will all get to learn that the hard way if we haven't already in the next 12 to 24 months. I think I'd keep a good eye on the U.S. election, the presidential election. I think we'll see an avalanche of fake news and fake videos, etc., in connection with that. You could argue that both candidates might benefit from a bit of artificial intelligence, but there is a clear problem with AI. Who's responsible? Can you know who you're dealing with? Can you know who is behind the messages that you get? And that, I believe, with the Web3 ID, we have a very good solution for at Concordium. So we will, in the next week, probably the beginning of the week, we will release a fairly detailed video around how those things can actually interact. There's a new space which I'm very interested in and have made investments in, which is around digital twins, avatars that are representations of human beings, and that's pretty cool because we're pretty close to a level where an avatar can take trivial meetings, can interact with you in a live stream, so you can sit and speak to an avatar, not just type in stuff in ChatGPT or OpenAI, but you can actually have a very real life experience. And I would hazard the guess that 6 months from now you could take a call on a streaming platform with somebody, and you wouldn't be very sure about whether you're speaking to an avatar, you're speaking to a real live person. That raises a whole range of issues about how do you authenticate avatars, how do you authenticate videos, how do you authenticate all of the stuff that's going to come as a part of that revolution. And we are very well positioned to offer our solutions on that, and we've been working towards that for a while now. Hence, while we haven't talked much about it, We will, over the next coming months, release several use cases where we show the interaction between AI and blockchain, and very real applications of that. So expect that April will be a campaign around this, and it'll kick off with actually with an avatar of me, where you can see how close we are with this technology to both being extremely valuable in terms of being able to do much more in the same time span, but also being extremely dangerous, because if it was not me that released that particular avatar and somebody else built it and sent it out there to do all sorts of things that I wouldn't like, well, then you have a real problem. So the whole need for authentication is going to be really, really big in that space, and I believe we have one of the very few solutions out there that are actually ready to handle that, and that's a combination of the Web3 ID, zero knowledge proofs, and everything that we've been building, really. So I see with the new AI focus and the new AI releases that's coming really thick and fast, almost improving on a daily basis. I see some of these things coming together to a very, very interesting interplay between Concordium and the AI space. Now, we have never sort of strayed from our vision, and I think it's interesting that what we said many years ago in terms of regulation, in terms of the need for ID, etc., is now beginning to become conventional wisdom, and people are accepting that that was actually correct. This is what's going to happen, and now we have to backpedal to make sure that we meet our obligations in this space. So that's of course good for vision, but we have never sort of strayed from that vision. We didn't become the NFT platform for NFTs, particularly in the 2021 hype craze there. So it's not a question of us sort of moving with the flavor of the month, like you see a number of other blockchains sort of adopting AI. In fact, I would say 90% of the investment projects that people send to me these days mention AI, just like in the late 90s they all mentioned the internet. That doesn't mean that people have really cool solutions, but it's a buzzword that helps you get investment and helps you get to the attention of people. And you see that a little bit in our space as well, because blockchain is sort of not a stranger to jumping on the latest trends and trying to stuff blockchain in every way you can. But in this case, I think it's a very, very real application for Concordium. So I would see it more not as a pivot, but as a stronger focus on a new and very important application of what Concordium is already building. So we're focusing increasing on that. We will also direct an increasing amount of our grants towards AI. On a separate level, I'm very interested in AI use cases. So if you have any real groundbreaking AI ideas and use cases, feel free to present them to Concordium or even Seier Capital, my investment company. So we will kick this off this week. I just wanted to hint a little bit at it. There'll be, as I said, a fairly detailed video, which will hopefully be an eye-opener for some people during the coming week. I don't want to spoil all the fun ahead of time, but expect that you will see a lot more from us in that area. And I think it's a real valid application of Concordium, and rather an extension of the decentralized strategy. It is an increased focus on that area rather than a pivot of the basic philosophy of Concordium. But it happens to sit very, very well with some of the problems, or many of the problems, that AI will undoubtedly represent, and will become more and more obvious, these problems, and be subject of regulation, these problems, in the very near future. So I just wanted to start with giving you that little teaser. I hope you'll enjoy what we're doing in April around this, and then I will move to the questions. So could I have the first question, please? When does Concordium partner with an exchange that uses Concordium KYC, so I don't need to submit KYC again when registering? We need more use cases like this. I absolutely agree, and I think the thing about financial institutions, exchanges, people in that space, is that as current legislation is, you actually need to do your own KYC. So if you imagine that we had hundreds of thousands of clients coming into Saxo Bank. We would have a big department sitting, making sure we knew who they were, making sure we knew where their money came from, making sure that we knew what experience they had in terms of what projects we could or what products we could offer them. And it was major cost factor, actually. Now, if that same client then went to one of our competitors, even in the same country, the next day, and wanted to open an account there, he or she would have to go through the exact same thing, which is, of course, extremely inefficient, but has a part role in that the financial regulators like to be sure that they can hold a specific financial institution accountable. We are working at a pilot level in the UK around a portable KYC solution, so that you could pass this on from financial institution to financial institution, and that's a very interesting project because it would save people an awful lot of the cost, and it would also create a standard so that the KYC was identical and could subsequently be approved by a regulator as what they exactly would like to see. So there is some legislation around this. We would love to see exchanges using our ID, but there may be some legislative things that makes that a little harder than it needs to be. I think it would make an awful lot of sense because nobody really wants to spend the money on an irrelevant ID KYC when it already exists. And interestingly, I think we're seeing some examples of people that are now coming with ID solutions that they can sort of piggyback on the Concordium ID as a base of token-based ID solutions, i.e. sort of not foundational ID solutions. So there is definitely a space there with portable KYC, portable ID, and of course we're exploring that as much as we can because we think that's a key characteristic, a key selling point of Concordium, that we actually do this stuff and do it across the entire foundational blockchain, so that it can cross and you can use the zero knowledge proofs from one use case to another. Good question. We'd love to see exchanges and other financial institutions piggybacking on our ID KYC, but I would say it's probably more likely in areas where you just want to do an ID on another blockchain, etc. And we have had requests around collaboration in this, rather than immediately on financial institutions like banks and exchanges. Next question, please. How's the work going on finding a CEO, and what type of candidate are you looking for? It's going well, or it's ongoing. For me, it's an important ambition for this year to find a 24/7 CEO. I spend a lot of time on Concordium, and I probably also spent a little more than I really have time, because I also have a number of other investments that deserve some attention. So for me, it's actually a very high priority, also for my own benefit, to find a CEO. But even if I spend a lot of time on it, it cannot be 24/7. I think we gave the project some direction in the last year or so, but I absolutely believe that the time is right to appoint a CEO, and I have a couple of recruitment agencies looking at that at the moment. I've spoken to the first few candidates on it, and there's some interesting possibilities, but it's a process that we are in the middle of, and as I said, I have strong incentivation also from a personal level to find that, and I think it'd be absolutely the best thing for the project also to have an experienced person being on the ground 24/7 with full focus on this. The candidate, I'm fairly open-minded, but of course it should be somebody with a degree of foot in both camps, having some understanding of the real world. Some of the candidates are out of the financial sector, TradFi sector, but have spent the latter years in our space. But I would clearly have a preference for somebody that understands both areas deeply, and perhaps also more more experience with the DGen space and more appeal to the DGen space than I personally have. You know, I can't really put on a hoodie and play DGen. I could, but it probably wouldn't work very well. I have a great deal of respect for the innovation and the sort of blockchain specific, blockchain native innovation that's happening. But I would really like somebody that has some of that experience, but also has some experience of how the world around us work, because that merge between what's around us and where we can add improvements and innovations to existing business models is still the biggest opportunity. There will for sure be things that can be done on a blockchain, projects, business models that couldn't be done without a blockchain, just as you couldn't have done social media without the internet. But the really big prize is still in how do we use blockchain to improve the financial system, to improve provenance, to improve transparency in industrial scale processes. And we've been happy to announce a couple of partnerships and use cases around, also some big corporate use cases. But of course, a lot of the activity is still driven by the crypto natives, and that's also very important. So ideally, somebody that can do both, can understand both, and understand the intersection between them. But then again, you know, we'll have to see what shows up. But it is a very high priority to solve this. These processes take some time. Good people are typically employed elsewhere. They want to leave nicely. I think it says a lot about a person, how that person leaves a job. So we're not going to push somebody to not behave responsibly in a current position. But it's something I hope to solve within a couple of months, maybe 3 months, depending a little bit on what candidates show up. Next question, please. Do you still believe it's the right strategy not to list CCD on more central exchanges? The prospect of getting one's project token listed on an exchange is limited if L1 isn't listed. I don't think it's ever been a strategy not to list on more exchanges. Absolutely not. We would like to list CCD on more exchanges. We just announced a listing on a smaller exchange last week or the week before. We're in conversations with a couple of other exchanges, but you have to understand a couple of things here, right? We're back in a market where more projects are launching. This means that the waiting list and exchanges, the cost of exchanges is increasing again. So it's not that easy. You know, if I could just put CCD on this and that exchange, I would do it tomorrow. But unfortunately, it also depends a little bit on the exchange's priorities and the exchange's ideas. But it's certainly not, has never been a strategy not to list us on many exchanges. It's more the art of the possible, and we definitely have an ambition both to list on more exchanges, to get more on-ramps. We've also announced SwipeLux recently, which is an on-ramp. That's a different way to access CCDs. But absolutely a priority. And as I said, we are in a couple of discussions now. I gotta manage expectations. That doesn't mean that it's going to launch next week, but for sure we'd like to list on more exchanges. And anybody has good contacts as in exchanges that we may not have on our radar, we're always very happy to listen to that, because of course access, liquidity is very important for any project in the world, not just in this space. If you have a low volume, hard to access asset, it doesn't necessarily unfold its value in the same way as if it's listed on the New York Stock Exchange, right? So feel free to come with input if you have real contacts at some exchanges, but alongside with that, we're of course doing our own work there. Next question, please. When can we expect something from Giga? Giga is a agency that does its work seriously. So they're doing an assessment of what is the right thing to do. I think they should be allowed to do that work, make their assessment about how is the right way to go out and promote Concordium. I believe that the AI campaign I just referred to is largely an internal one, but then we should start seeing some output from Giga probably during the month of May. Next question, please. In the new strategy, Giga was mentioned for influencer campaigns. Any updates? It's the same answer, really. They're doing their homework, figuring out the scope. Influencers are part of the consideration, but I think we will let them do their work. And as I said, I would expect the first sort of output probably in May. Next question, please. When exactly will Tricom Bridge go live? They have been through an audit process, but it is my belief, and I think that's pretty firm, that it will go live mid-April. So I put my hand on the hot stove there, but that's the latest I've heard, that sometime around mid-April, Tricom should go live. Next question, please. Why are people from the board of Concordium AG, the company, and those of Concordium Foundation, e.g. Professor Uli Maurer, totally quiet regarding Concordium? It could be interpreted as a lack of commitment. It seems that Lars Seier is the only Concordium management person promoting the Concordium blockchain and speaking about it publicly. I wouldn't quite agree. I think certainly for other management people from the day-to-day management team that are quite active in sharing information on various channels. I think you have to understand that the board are people that are sort of overseeing the governance of the project. They have skill sets in that. There's a lawyer, there's a professor, there's various people of that nature. And I don't think they see it as a job to sit and be on social media all the time, and I wouldn't ask that of them. So I think they prioritize their time. They're providing a valuable service to Concordium that I am happy about and grateful for. So I'm not going to sit and push people that have important work to do in their other functions to sit and be on social media. I think that's up to the individuals themselves, and I think you will also see that the people you're referring to is not pushing an awful lot of other stuff on social media. You know, there's some things that are for some people and some things that are for other people. Of course, they're most welcome to do it, but it's not something that I would put as a precondition. I need people that know how to act on a board and help us get this project right and have the right governance for it. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. We will announce a change to the board during the month of April, which may change that a little bit, but we'll get back to that. But I think our management team is generally active. Of course, they also have a day job to sort of running the project and building the project. But I think all of the sort of day-to-day management are reasonably active on social media. And of course, again, you can amplify that activity by sharing their input, linking to it, etc., so that it gets out to even more people. So feel always free to do that. We appreciate that, and I think it's important for spreading the word. Next question, please. Since the pandemic, Solana has been very successful regarding usage, number of wallets, transactions, community developer mindshare, and price go up. What inspiration does the Concordium team take from that? Yeah, I think Solana has without question seen a very significant pickup. That's always inspirational, also because it looked not that great, not a year and a half ago, and they managed to sort of come out of the doldrums. There are other projects that go from being a relatively low activity to increasing share of mind and use cases and projects. So of course we always keep an eye on the competitive space out there and see what seems to drive those projects. There are also a lot of projects that don't experience that. You know, you have to remember that CoinMarketCap lists, I think, about 26,000 projects today. So of course it's not everybody that succeeds with that, but I think I think being true to what you do and keep working on delivering a good project is the precondition for ever having any success. And for me, it's very important to make sure that we keep delivering a good solution, keep bringing up interesting new use cases, and as I just referred to, also giving some additional focus and direction into important areas, as for example artificial intelligence. So I think it's also a question of just continuously developing the project and let people identify that you actually are doing that. I don't know if you noticed, but if you go and have a look at transactions on the blockchain, they are actually increasing quite rapidly through multiple projects. There's another couple of high volume transaction use cases launching shortly. I think one in the next couple of weeks. So I think actually there is a progress there. It's not reflected so much in the valuation and the activity on the token, which I'm sure some of you are following with interest. But I actually think that the core metrics, which is transactions, that's why you have a blockchain to basically support people doing things on that blockchain, is a very encouraging metric. And if you haven't visited the CCD scan recently, you might want to go and have a look at how that's developing. Next question, please. Solana has a relatively new and powerful feature called Solana token extensions. Those extensions enable things like transfer hooks for compliance, metadata, and much more. Is there something similar coming from Concordium? Why not? So somebody thinks he knows the answer already. So I see we have a Solana fan here, and that's great. I like the token extension idea of Solana, which, if you don't know it, is about you being able to hook other attributes onto a given token. So I would say it's more like making a permission token on a permissionless blockchain, I guess would be the easiest way to describe it. And it's an interesting idea. It's kind of similar to what we're doing with verifiable credentials, but in a less foundational way, if you will. So it's more about you having a project and being able to attach certain conditions to transfers of tokens and between your users. So it's slightly different to our sort of foundational idea of these things going across the entire blockchain. But that doesn't mean I think it's a nice project, and I think it is something you can be inspired by, but it is to some extent covered by what we call verifiable credentials. But it is an interesting thing. But it's really about reducing the sort of the permissionless nature and giving a project more control over their tokens. So a slight variation on the basic idea of blockchain, but an interesting project, and we keep an eye on it. But I would say we have our own strategy for that around Web3 ID, verifiable credentials, etc., which I actually think is a better way to go, because that is why we chose that way. But absolutely, we keep an eye on other good ideas out there, and that's not the worst idea I've seen recently. Next question, please. Do you see a risk that other blockchains improve and that Concordium loses its unique selling proposition, identity, and confidential transactions? I don't see it as a risk that people are actually coming around to our narrative. I think it's a good thing. I think it proves that the vision we had from the start was correct, and I think that increased focus on ID and other aspects of accountability and privacy, and the difference between privacy and anonymity, I think it's a good thing. So I welcome that other people try to find solutions there, because it actually validates our use case, or our vision for Concordium. It mostly is solved by kind of token solutions to ID. So it's not really touching at the crux of the problem, that you want an entire environment that's safe to operate in, because you would still, on many chains, even if you can tokenize an ID or a soulbound token type thing, you still have the problem that a vast proportion of most networks remain anonymous and remain problematic, which I think is not really grabbing the problem at the root, but we decided to do that from the outset, and hence have a completely uncontaminated chain, which I think will increasingly prove to be an advantage. But I think it's good that other people are coming around to this, because I think, one, as I mentioned earlier, there's a probability that some of these people will actually see Concordium as a shortcut to populating their own ID solutions, i.e. that we can be an undersupplier for some other projects there. And I think it's a general validation of that the world is moving in the direction that we foresaw many years ago. So I'm actually quite encouraged that if this was still completely the Wild West and everybody could do whatever they want without any thought for regulation or legislation or accountability, I'll be more worried than I am by seeing the space moving in our direction, to be honest. So I think it's a good thing that other people built these solutions. I think in terms of the technology itself, I think, and I know that Concordium compares very well. It's a very well built blockchain. It has worked without incident since launch. It has a low block time. It has finality. It increasingly supports more and more transactions, and we know we can extend that if and when needed primarily to parallel block execution. So I actually think we should recognize that we have an extremely well-built technical solution here, where you see a number of breakdowns and problems with other blockchains, none mentioned, none forgotten. Doesn't seem to happen here, knock on wood, and that I think is a testament to us having been pretty careful both in our cryptographic understanding and in our actual tech build. As the space matures, I think this will increasingly be recognized by people looking to deploy blockchain. It should be. But of course, when people are just venturing into blockchain as a let's say an old world company, they may not yet appreciate fully these differences, and that's really what we need to help educate people on. A blockchain is not just a blockchain. There are good blockchains, solid blockchains, and there are not so good blockchains. And it's not necessarily about who pays most influencers or who hypes most. If you're a corporate, you want to make sure that things work actually, and probably less influenced by that. Next question, please. It seems the people involved in Concordium are much older than those in Ethereum or in Solana. Is it a problem or rather an opportunity to win over some more experienced people? I think it's both. I would love to be 30 years younger, but I don't think AI has fixed that just yet. But I would definitely take that. I'll definitely take that upgrade. Yeah, I think it leans back to the discussion we had around the ideal CEO, that you have kind of two environments here. You have the crypto native degen, new inventions, new business models, and you have the application of blockchain into industrial scale solutions, where it adds efficiency and transparency and security and immutability to data. And these are two quite different environments, although building on the same technology. And of course, if you grew up with no experience from prior to blockchain, well, then you presumably are very well versed in that, because that's your primary interest and where you spend all your time. If you grew up before anybody had heard about Bitcoin, and you saw how the world worked even prior to the internet when I was a very young man, then I believe there's also some benefit to have seen those transformations and see what drives them and what the consequences are of them, and what might work in the short term but not in the long term, and what might be slower in the short term but work in the long term. So I think ideally you have a combination of both, and we probably are a little heavier on the gray hair than on the degens, which is kind of an issue, but that's also why it's important to build communities around us that are fully developed out of the native environment. But But in my experience, you have to be open-minded, and I think, to be honest, that I and the other people that moved into this space from another history before have proven that open-mindedness. You see also quite a lot of very clever TradFi people moving into this over the last few years, and they're actually coming up with really, really clever stuff that is also based on their understanding of problems and challenges and solutions in the old world, and that definitely adds a value as well. And I think some of the projects I like to look at is actually where I see that combination of experience, but also understanding of the crypto native space. So I think it's good and for some things, and the youngishness and the enthusiasm and the sort of deep involvement only in that space is also good. So I think you can slice that both ways, to be honest. But the fact that I am 61, I can't change. So you're going to have to live with that. But thankfully, I'm also pretty much the oldest guy in this company, I think. So don't worry too much about that. Next question, please. What do you, Lars, think we, the community, should improve or put more focus on? How can we help make Concordium more successful? Thank you for that question. Nice of you to think about it. I normally state that anything you can do to engage with us, engage in our communities, help newcomers to that community, spread the word, spread the awareness, share the content, link to the content, come with good ideas, come with input to us. I think is all very welcome. And that's happening for a number of people out there, and some people have done a lot to produce content, to help distribute content, etc. We have now kind of formalized that a little bit more with the ambassador program. So again, I would encourage, if you feel you would like to play a bigger role in that, then we very much welcome serious applicants to that program, because there we make it a little bit easier for you to actually support and help us. I would also remind you about the election to the governance committee that's coming up in June, I believe. We are putting up 2 places on our governance committee in the continuous decentralization process, and you, the community, can vote on who you want to join the governance committee. So if you have that interest, consider yourself as a candidate. What does the governance committee do? It looks at various directions for the tokenomics, for the inflation, for the aspects of how we run this. So it's an interesting place to be, and we're going to add 2 members to this governance committee on a regular basis, so that ultimately it will be run primarily by community elected participants. Today it's coming from a base of people we appointed to it, but that's a very good way if you really want to get engaged. Consider if you could be a candidate for the upcoming election, where we will elect two community members to the governance board. You even get some money for it, so you could also take that into consideration. So that would be a couple of ways, but anything you can do to help awareness, to support and like and spread the word is, of course, very important. And if you see interesting use cases and projects out there that are building on other chains, but where some of our attributes could be very relevant, speak to them. Tell them about Concordium. I've met people that hadn't heard about Concordium, that were about to go onto other blockchains, and if you sit down an hour with them and explain to them what is the difference between Concordium's particular characteristics and other blockchains, I have over time moved a number of those people and changed their decision, because actually when they understand what we do, they can see that it's a better solution, particularly if you have concerns, of course, around ID KYC. We also have now very, very low transaction fees. You can see that some of the other chains have increasing transactions fees as they grow more successful. I believe that's the case with Solana, for example. and that might not mean anything if you're doing like high value transactions, but it means a lot if you're doing low value transactions. So the combination of a solid build, all of the attributes I described before, low transaction cost, and the ID. If you see people out there that seem to be able to benefit from that, send them our direction, and we'd be happy to speak more to them about why they might want to consider Concordium. But thank you for the question, and we very much appreciate anything that any of you do. So the more the better, but we already appreciate what's being done. If you, as I said, particularly interested, consider joining the ambassador program, or if you are really deeply interested, consider running for the governance committee. Next question, please. Let's think in scenarios. Let's say there was an entity, e.g. some institution that wanted to acquire a large amount of CCD, e.g. for 10 million. Could they do an OTC deal with Seier Capital, or how could this be done without moving the CCD price too much? Well, they're not going to be doing an OTC deal with Seier Capital because I'm not selling, so I can rule that out. But of course, the way that we have always funded this project in earlier rounds has been through the foundation letting go of some of their tokens, not on the market, but in deals where people have then contributed to the financing of the project. So I imagine that if a VC wanted to put in a substantial amount, that's a discussion. We actually want to distribute for decentralization purposes also some of the foundation holdings over time, but we're not going to go out and dump them on exchanges. But for locked up deals, which typically VCs actually prefer because they want to know that there is some lockup mechanism. Yes, that could conceivably be an OTC deal with the foundation, but not with me. I'm not selling. Next question, please. Any plans on getting listings on Bybit and Binance? We love to, but as I said earlier, it's not always only down to what we want. We have ongoing conversations with a couple of exchanges at the moment, decent exchanges, not the size of Binance, but we are definitely looking to add exchanges. But I'm not going to go into details about who or who not, because that's another thing you need to remember is that when you list on an exchange, the modus operandi is pretty clear. You do the integration, you maybe do an incentivization program, but you let the exchange announce it. So even if I did have an exchange that we would launch on Monday, which we don't, then I would not be able to tell you about it because the exchange would then get pissed because they want to run the announcements around this. So, but rest assured that we're keeping options open to go on more exchanges and more on ramps, which you shouldn't forget in this context. Next question, please. You posted a picture on Instagram on 18th of December 2017 enjoying lunch with Charles Hoskinson. Is that the day you decided to launch Concordium? Charles is a good friend. I've had a number of good interactions with him, and it's correct, we had a nice Christmas lunch in Zurich back in 17, and actually to some extent you're right, because I was sharing some of my misgivings with Charles around the anonymity, and at that point a whole range of technical issues that were not solved by most of the early stage solutions. And we had a constructive conversation about that, but maybe it was a bit too critical, because in the end he said, Lars, if you're so unhappy, why don't you build your own blockchain? So in a way that got me thinking. So it's not incorrect, the story. And I went home the same evening and said, Charles is a sensible man. He's probably right. So what is it really? Let me quantify what my concerns are with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and let me sit and make a checklist for how do I think that the right blockchain would look, and out of that came Concordium. So to some extent that story is correct. Next question, please. You're on the waiting list. Somebody's looking at my Instagram here. You're on the waiting list of your Danish compatriot, Nicholas Nicolajsen. Why is CCD not on the list at Bitcoin Swiss? It's true that I would like to think, a very good personal friend with Nicholas. So we both live in Switzerland, and we try to meet up occasionally to share some talk about the industry, and most likely a nice bottle of red wine. And Nicholas can tell me about the latest goal item or weapon that he's bought, which is his two passions. So we have a very friendly relationship since many years, and I actually knew him just when Bitcoin Swiss started. I'm not quite sure what you mean on the list at Bitcoin Swiss. Bitcoin Swiss is not an exchange per se, but we're in close contact. I can take it up with him if we can do a little more for CCD on Bitcoin Swiss, but Nicholas has actually sort of moved to being honorary chairman of Bitcoin Swiss, as far as I know. So he's not so involved in the day-to-day operational stuff. Incidentally, he just got his third baby a day or two ago. So congratulations to Nicholas if you see this at some point. But he's a good friend and obviously a true OG in this business. So we have a lot of fun, and we actually also discuss sometimes what good for the industry, what could be good for Concordium. Next question, please. The largest L1s lack protocol level ID, potentially impacting regulatory compliance. Solana Sol ID initiative addresses this. Is this sufficient? What will other layer ones have to do? Our Solana fan is back. Yeah, Sol ID is partially addressing this. Again, it's more at a tokenized level. As far as I'm aware, I'm not deep into the detail around it, but I think we will see everyone trying to address this in one way or the other. We actually have an interesting use case, digital social ID, that is also doing something in multi-chains, and as far as I know, they're using the Concordium ID as a base of the Sol ID. So you kind of need something to bring to that ID, and of course it's not like on Concordium, something that's applicable to the entire community, entire network. It addresses some issues, and I don't think, as I said, I don't think you should be worried about this. This is only good that the industry is coming around to understanding that ID is kind of the basic ticket to play in the normal world. You know, there might be some fringes where you can ignore it, or something where it's not relevant, but if you're doing anything to do with what could look like financial transactions, clearly ID will be required across the globe in some way, shape, or form. Some regulators are a little bit ahead of the curve, somebody behind it, but it's so basic in the TradFi industry that of course it's going to spread to this industry as well, and I think for the good, to be honest, because I don't think it's an objective for this industry to sort of support people being able to do things totally anonymously, because it doesn't mean it has to be bad because you're doing it anonymously, but it could be bad. And of course, regulation and ID KYC is all about protecting weaker participants in the industry, that they don't get taken for a ride by professionals, and that they have some requirements to actually assess suitability, and also that users can assess what they're dealing with. So I think it's a good thing, and I think it's very supportive of Concordium's narrative and a validation of the vision we had all along. Next question, please. Despite promises of better liquidity, this still hasn't happened. When can we expect that? Larger investors still can't buy, sell without moving the price. I would say there is a little bit more liquidity. If you go have a look at CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko, we certainly want it better still, but actually it is picking up somewhat, and I think there's hardly any token where, depending on how you define a larger investor, but there are very few tokens where where you could make a meaningful transaction, big transaction, without significantly moving the price. I'm not saying that that is not a lot better on some of the bigger tokens, but it is a problem, which is also why when I do like to take a punt, to be honest, still I don't think Bitcoin or Ethereum even are suitable for short-term trading. Then I revert to fiat, the euro against the US dollar, where you have trillions of liquidity in real liquidity every day, and where you can make substantial trades, 50, 100 million, essentially without moving the price, which of course means you can go for much smaller movements. So liquidity is a general problem in the industry, but something that needs addressing and will happen over time if the space gets more popular. And that is a problem for example, institutional adoption. If you need to have a real exposure in a market, it's very hard to put on, I would say, even in Bitcoin, but certainly in anything else than Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's very hard to put on a large short-term position. In fact, not possible, I would say. So that's why it's a hodl space. You pick your bets and you try to hang in with them for a while, because when I trade euro against the dollar, I can trade 10, 20, 50 times a day, and probably turning over $1 billion or something in say 20 transactions, and go for very, very small intraday movements. This would be completely impossible even in Bitcoin. So we're still lacking behind big, deep liquid markets, but interest is increasing, it seems. Next question, please. Will it be possible to meet someone from Concordium at any conferences soon? Yes, and I would like to just say that here. I'm heading on Sunday night. I'm heading to the Paris Blockchain Week for a few days. Then I'm heading to Rome for a couple of use cases, and then I'm heading to Dubai Token 2049. All over the next 2 weeks. I'll also be spending a little bit of time in Abu Dhabi. So anyone that has an interesting project, an interesting use case, feel free to reach out or connect or introduce. And I will, both in Paris Blockchain Week and in Dubai, be joined by a small team of Concordium representatives. So yes, we will be around there. We will also be at Consensus in Texas later this spring, where actually we will most likely also showcase some of the AI stuff we're working on. So yes, we try to come out there and meet people, and if you have something serious and important, feel free to make an introduction. Next question, please. Currently, Concordium is fostering a minimal viable ecosystem through a hyper-focused effort to identify, enhance, and promote the features that can interplay to create a self-sustainable blockchain ecosystem with positive networks effect. How can anyone make anything of this extremely long and difficult sentence about the roadmap? When will the value of Concordium be communicated in more inspiring ways? I do agree that particular sentence is a bit of a tongue twister. I think it does try to describe what we're trying to achieve, but I wouldn't sit here and argue that that's a Shakespearean example of preciseness or expressing things as clearly as possible. But I actually does think that what it says is what it says on the box is what it does, right? Of course, communication is always a question of taste. So I think in general we're trying to communicate pretty much eye to eye with people, but maybe that's not the very strongest example of that. Next question, please. Are there still plans to list on a tier 1 high volume exchange? We've seen the announcement about Swipe, Lux, and LCX exchange. Yes, these have minimal impact and don't lead to better liquidity. Well, I mean, many streams make a river, and both of those are adding to liquidity. It's not Binance, but they are adding to liquidity. And I've already touched upon the whole exchange listing aspect. It is not just us that decides which exchanges we're on. It's not for lack of interest in it, and we have several discussions ongoing, but we can't really speak to it before we are there. So we keep working on that. Thank you. Next question, please. Why does Concordium do a giveaway of CCD with swipe looks, knowing and even mentioning Zero ID, which is a competitor? Let's take that in two parts. On all exchanges and on-ramps for that matter, there's a preference for an initial presentation campaign, and that's the same with swipe looks. It's a way to introduce people to the fact that now there's a new token on that particular exchange or on that particular on-ramp. So I don't think there's anything unusual in that. Everybody else does that, and actually it's generally a requirement, certainly from exchanges, that you also allocate some tokens to an awareness campaign or trading competition or whatever you call it. So that's pretty standard, I would say. Zero ID I wouldn't call a competitor more than in a wider sense of any ID solution being a competitor, but again, there's nothing unique about that. Any exchange you go into, at least any serious exchange, any on-ramp where you can swipe your credit card and buy a token, you will be asked for KYC and identification. So that's pretty much standard as well. And of course, there are a number of solutions on-chain, off-chain for that in these off-ramps and exchanges. So I would say that's normal. If you go into and open an account in Saxo Bank, you'll have an ID KYC process, and that's not necessarily a competition, but of course it's a different way of doing ID KYC. So that you will find in any serious environment. So I wouldn't really pay too much attention to the specific mechanism that an on-ramp or an exchange uses. Our ID is very specific. It's done the way we think it should be. It has the add-on on verifiable credentials, zero knowledge proofs, goes across the entire network, and I would say it's not directly comparable to sort of the ID KYC onboarding mechanisms on various financial intermediaries or exchanges or on-ramps. Next question, please. Is the foundation selling CCD through Northstake? No, the foundation is not selling CCDs. Its foundation is, as I mentioned, could do an off-market deal with a big investor or something. That would have to be a bigger one for funding of the project. Or it would distribute CCDs to some use cases to support their launches, to support their transactions in some cases, but we're not sort of out selling the core stake of the foundation through neither Northstake or anywhere else. Next question, please. I don't know if that indicates that was the last question, but I'll give it a second. It wasn't the last question. Why didn't Concordium announce a partnership with Fujitsu properly? What is the marketing agency doing? Well, I said this before, and I will say it again. When you're dealing with big corporates, then it's their agenda, it's their way of marketing stuff, and they don't necessarily share our wish to see this high and low everywhere, right? So we're very cognizant and respectful towards anybody using Concordium blockchain, how they would like to announce it. Actually, I think it was pretty nice of Fujitsu to announce it directly on their own LinkedIn page with a million followers. But it's really for them to decide, and that's also why I've said to you many times, this thing will be coming up. We can't announce it because it is down to that particular project or use case to decide how they want to do it. And typically, the bigger the corporate, the more conservative they would be in their communication. Then we have other, more classic crypto native use cases where there's a shared ambition to tell everybody about it and get awareness, etc. But when you're a big corporate, you want a blockchain that works, and I think that's what we should appreciate when people like Fujitsu choose Concordium and to work with us. It's not something that we should sort of hijack to promote our own courses, and that would not be taken very, very friendly by most corporates if we did. So that's just the way that game is, and we have to respect that corporates run to their own agenda, to their own marketing messaging, to doing things the way they want to do it. We're just happy that they choose Concordium over other opportunities out there. Next question, please. Can you elaborate on strategic importance of Euro-E for Concordium, also in light of ECB being open for distributed ledgers facilitating Euro payments? I think Euro-E was a very important addition to the ecosystem. To have a native stablecoin on Concordium is important. I like the Euro-E team. I like the model. It's licensed. It has a good strategy for securing that it's adequately backed by assets for the value of the Euro-E, and we are trying to integrate it where we can and use it where we can. In fact, we are considering if we should pay grants in Euro-E to support the project. So I think it's of significant importance. There's obviously a number of big stable coins out there that typically dollar-based. So there is a distinct need for euro-based stable coins, as a lot of people obviously transacting not just in dollars but in euros. So I think it's important, and I think we should all support it. So if we have a way to use Euro-E in some context, do it by all means, just like we aim to do. It is important to have a native stable coin. It's important to have Euro stable coins, and we're very happy for that collaboration. Next question, please. Last question. Concordium is addressing a wide range of use cases from gaming to real-world assets. Would you think it makes sense to perhaps focus more capacity on a few use cases to excel in those, and how do you perceive this? Well, clearly, there is some prioritization in our process. We give some people grants, other people we don't give grants. We give some people small grants, we give some people bigger grants. We try to help anybody that wants to build on Concordium with assistance, be that technical or commercial. And of course, we provide more of that to people with big potential than it's possible for us to do with use cases with more limited potential. So I think we are to some extent doing that prioritization, and I think we have to, because resources are finite, and you can't give a total resource to everything, because then you will get nothing. So as I said to you, we're going to increase our focus on AI. That is going to be visible in some of the stuff we bring out, some of the use cases you'll see over the next month, and also on some of our grant activities. So there is a degree of additional focus on that sector, certainly, for sure. We are also very interested in the real-world asset aspect, because we have built the Agora platform. We're getting very good feedback on people that are beginning to build on that one. So we're kind of having a piece of accessorial infrastructure, so you don't have to build it from scratch yourself, and that resonates with some real-world asset use cases we got underway. So there is a degree of prioritization, but of course we are a foundational layer one in principle, use case agnostic. So we don't want to stop anybody building on us, but of course we decide what we prioritize in terms of giving grants, allocating resources, etc. But we try to really be a very supportive team towards anybody that's interested in building on Concordium, because that is something we hear that's not the case on all blockchains, where you're pretty much left to your own devices when you decide to go down that route. So, that was the last question. We did it in about an hour and 10. So thank you very much for listening in. Let me repeat that April, you're going to see a focus on AI, including a kickoff in the coming week. I mentioned the Tricone Bridge in mid-month, which is also an important development. And I mentioned that I and the team will be out and about in Paris, Rome, and Dubai in the next 2 weeks. So feel free to direct interesting stuff to us there. And in the meantime, I'll be back in about a month's time. Thank you for all your questions. Keep them coming. Keep liking, keep sharing, keep linking to our content. Join the ambassador program if you are interested, and we'll all collaborate to spread the word. Thank you very much for this time, and enjoy yourself and have a good life till we meet next.